in different historical periods. We try to talk about the different purposes of music in different periods of music history. So in antiquity, and our first stop is in Plato's Republic, so about 300 BC, in which, in a dialogue with his students, Socrates says, "If you let me make a nation's music, I care not who may make its laws." So music very influential. And if you say that sounds like an extravagant claim, just think of the 1960s. Which had the bigger influence? Music of the 1960s or the laws of the 1960s? And you'll say right away, well, for young people, certainly music. The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, so many others, the Woodstock concert. Okay, next slide, please. About the same time, this time in China, there's another treatise of a teacher and dialogue with his students, this time Confucius, the Analects, again, roughly the same time as Socrates, and he said that the way he got his spiritual experience, and this is the second purpose of music, the first being transformation of a nation or a person, this time it's religion or a spiritual experience, he used the character or the word li. This is a modern version of the li. If you trace it back to its origins, it's two tables with two sacrifices. One is an animal sacrifice, and that has blood, and the other is a vegetable sacrifice. And you might think right away of Christian communion with wine and blood. Interesting with this one is that in the vegetable sacrifice, there's no rice. Food characters without rice mean that the character was invented before the cultivation of rice. So it's a very old character or word in Chinese to talk about the spiritual sacred music. Next slide, please. And going back even further, this time to about 1000 BC, we think of Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey. The first word is sing, and we believe that it was sung a little bit each night, maybe for 30 nights, maybe like the music of Ramadan, telling a story. So what have we got? Transforming people or nations, telling stories, and spirituality. Music in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, Gregorian chant we think of for the spread of Christianity. Polyphony, when people started to sing more than one line at a time, and overall different kinds of music for the court and the church. Next slide. And then the huge change with Martin Luther and the Protestant denomination and Reformation, which led to the music of Bach. So special emphasis on that, on the Baroque music. Go ahead, next slide. And the classical period, which is we have the masterpiece of symmetry and balance and reason, the Enlightenment, the music of Mozart is the classical example. Go ahead. And now the purpose of expression, very important in our work with dementia, expression. And Beethoven is the first person we think of as writing music to express something. Also, we think of different kind of expression in the Impressionist composers, Debussy, Ravel, like Expressionist painting. Go ahead. Okay, chapter 2, I introduced myself, and I thought, first of all, I wanted to mention that my parents and grandparents grew up on farms, and every farmhouse I've ever visited has a piano and has a violin. Music is very important to those communities. I started with piano lessons, like most people my age, and I got into teaching and research in musicology.
Paul, can you
And
lean
then,
back? You're crushing the wire. Just lean back.
oh, I touched the wire. Sorry about that. Research and teaching in musicology. And there came a point where my department needed to teach more students who did not read music. So I taught film music to hundreds of students every year. This was my experience of community teaching, which I've carried into Seniors Junction. Next slide, please.
So, So the whole idea of us showing you these slides is to summarize each chapter, present the highlights. So when you read the chapter 3 in the book, it's about my journey with music. And I didn't train in any music until I started this company. I mean, maybe a class here or there, but not really. So for me, music mainly came through dance. And the book mentions a story when Paul and I were coming back from Niagara, and he commented that I have a great sense of rhythm, but not so much of musicality. And of course, as you'll read our story and our books, I think you'll know that we started during the pandemic. One of the other things that happened in the pandemic was I lost my dad, and the last thing I did for him when he was in the long-term care in the hospital was to make a playlist for him. So I think that stayed with us. And I learned music on the job by attending a lot of Seniors Junction, formerly called Seniors Junction, now called Music Memory Junction. So I attended a lot of our lectures, and that made me curious about classical music. So I started attending concerts at NAC in Ottawa, and then I took some lessons in piano. I took some choir lessons. I performed in some spiritual choirs that I'm a part of. So I think for me music came around because I have this company, but that helped me understand. I can read a bit of sheet music now, but it was I was able to then converse with Paul and then use a lot of his artistic skills into a business product. So yeah. And then chapter 4, essentially, when you look at innovation, innovation means looking at the same thing in a new way, in a creative way. The principle under which we would say music can work for seniors, and the crux of this book, it's called connected autonomy. And what does that mean is, so historically, let's go a bit in the history. Previously, elder care was more about duty, and now it's more about institutions. And so that change has made it from a culture to a care praise kind of a thing. And if, as Paul talked about antiquity, back in the day, elders were regarded for their authority and wisdom, and during the Roman Empire, or they also had place in the political circles and in different kinds of bureaucracy. And we've mentioned all those details in the books. And in today, if you think of an older person dying, the first image that comes to most people's mind is someone who's totally wired up with different machines. So we've medicalized aging, just the way we've medicalized pregnancy, and both of these are natural phenomena of life. And for Paul and us, we kind of observe the cracks in the system, both in the healthcare system, in the long-term care, in independent living, and even in aging at home. Like people were living in their homes, but they really didn't have something purposeful to do. And essentially, how we define connected autonomy is basically it's the connection is basically two human needs that are getting combined. It is basically autonomy, which is the ability to make one's choices, direct one's life, and retain dignity. And the other one is connection, where you have an assurance of belonging, reciprocity, and recognition. So essentially, autonomy without connection becomes isolation. And all of us have met those hyper independent people who don't want to rely on anybody. And connection without autonomy becomes dependencies. I come from India, so you'll see a lot of seniors here so dependent on their spouses or their children, and sometimes when one of the spouse passes away, it's really challenging for them. Or when they're living with children but they don't have the basic technology skills, or depending on what kind of skills that kind of setup needs. So I think for Paul and my perspective in this book, we've mentioned need to balance the two perspectives and help older adults thrive. So essentially, we want to move beyond care and go towards a culture. Essentially, that aging is not a medical journey, it's a cultural one. And that societies need to frame, if you frame elder care only as care, like in a hospital care, you're only going to think about decline, frailty, cost, and risk. But if you embrace it from a connected autonomy point of view, you'll start seeing elders as people who can continue in the span of society, contribute, and culture. And we have someone on the call whose daughter is a K-pop fan, so am I. So K-pop fandoms are the ultimate example of connected autonomy, where you have individuals who decide to semi-worship these singers or whatever, but they make intensive communities which help people connect, and also the companies are happy with them because it pushes their products. But that's the second part of it. But creating those communities is important. And so for us, the takeaway wisdom is that conversation is one of the most important outcomes we are hoping for. Paul, is it okay if I mute you? There's a lot of static for me. Um, and our program suggests we take icebreakers, get people talk together before the sessions, so that there is some sense of I get to know this person I'm attending a class with. And once the subject begins, like a Mozart or a Beethoven or whatever, we keep it as, it's an artistic interpretation. So we don't really focus on right and wrong answers. Just like someone reading a book will not have a right or wrong answer in a book club setup. And we don't want to discourage comments or expression, because essentially this is a therapeutic setup, uh, not clinical setup, but it's therapeutic for people to connect over music. So that's our learning so far. And then Paul, chapter 5.
All right, so we did pilots. Um, you see the Western Canada pilot that Calgary won in the GTA, and maybe the most scientifically studied one was the one at the Ottawa Pearly Center of Excellence. That's a research center of excellence for aging, and the Veterans Hospital in Canada. That was an 8-week program delivered in that setting to residents. So that was our sort of official experience. Here's some photos. You've got the Ottawa setup for the Pearly Hospital. And when we asked people before starting, they were very interested in history. They were interested in film music and other music, classical music, visual arts, psychology, the humanities, less interested in things like science or digital things. Curiosity was one of their reasons for wanting to do it. Enjoyment of new learning, yes. Some of them said, I believe in lifelong learning. And the interesting thing was this survey showed that the participants were cognitively engaged, not passive. They wanted to grow. Go ahead. At the end, another survey, of course, they enjoyed the discussions. They found the conversations stimulating. They liked going once a week. Some of them would have liked a smaller group. Some of them found that the size was just right. Go ahead. So what stood out? History stood out, the musical pieces stood out, and the story, because it's presented as a narrative, right? We all have stories, and history is a story. That's why we call it history. So that's what stood out for them. Go ahead. Why? Why is this so important? Well, there are consequences when people don't have meaningful activity, don't have purpose. Results in sadness, withdrawal, inertia, depression, and isolation. From isolation, there's an elevated risk of early onset dementia and early death. This from a meta-study conducted in Brigham and Young University. Go ahead. Neuroplasticity. This is one of the positive outcomes of our program. It means flexibility. It means dementia. I always think of it as hardware and software. We can see amyloid plaque on the brain. We also know that we only use a small percentage of our brains, and that when we learn something new, the brain makes a new pathway. So with the neuroplasticity, instead of being rigid in our thinking, we have different ways, we have workarounds, we have ways to get back to those experiences that are meaningful to us. So the neuroplasticity, the flexibility in the brain is very important, and this is why we have something new. We target people with nostalgia, and that resonates with them, then we add something new. Go ahead. We did try. We did try to present our package as an online course, essentially what we say static content. That was ineffective. People did not get much out of that any more than they get much out of an online course by themselves. They need the group discussion. They need to express. Go ahead. So, the Music Discussion Club, like a book club, has the depth from online learning, has scalability, has familiarity because people are used to discussion clubs, and we say stickiness. So it helps us reform elder care as culture rather than as care, and in effect, we can reframe aging itself. Go ahead. So the Music Discussion Club, it has the tradition of a gathering, and it's like a book club. I'm sure lots of us belong to book clubs. Go ahead. We could, with the online course, make music portable, but with the Music Discussion Club, we have music back in a circle of people who can express and discuss together. And there's a lot more value and energy in that. Go ahead. Music travels directly into the brain's emotional centers. Yes, it resonates when we get the right music for someone. If they are a fan of Frank Sinatra and we play them right Frank Sinatra, yes, those melodies activate the hippocampus and the limbic system, the memory and feeling, and there are associations. And then from there, if they can learn something new about it, well, then the brain just expands and expands. Go ahead. So we had to design this product for two different groups: people living at home, we say aging in place, and people in different group settings: senior centers, residences, memory care units, lifelong learning programs. Two slightly different versions of the same content. Go ahead. These are people living at home, aging in place, and here they are at a live event that we've done for them. Actually, this is a performance that was a kind of a field trip to performance by Opera Atelier in Toronto. And well, this was the sign-up sheet for a series of classes that we did as groups, live instruction. Go ahead.
And this was done in a retirement home. And Paul,
Oh,
this was
that's right.
La
You're right.
Traviata.
This was the group one. Thank you. It's so on the music appreciation class. That's right. We conducted that in a retirement home, the Viva. Right.
And these guys are here right now in Burlington at what do you call, La Traviata by Solo. It was not Opera Atelier.
Okay, this was the Traviata. Good. All right. So for people aging in place, living at home, they do their listening at home. They reflect on their own time with questions we give them, and then they come together to discuss. That's how their plan works.
So that's
Go
what
ahead.
we've explained in the book, that you know, that how people can design. When we say listen at home, we mean playlists that we curate,
Playlists that we curate.
and we mean lectures that we record. So these are things that you
Right.
listen at home.
Right.
And of course, since this is a book for everybody to use, if someone else wants to use this idea, that's what they would also do. Um,
All right. So here we've got a big presentation, I think, on Beethoven to a Probus club. That's like a Rotary club, those of you who may not know Probus. So presentation to a group of people, and that was interesting, giving that and seeing what they came up with. Here, another presentation, similar idea, and we've got people sitting at tables so they're able to discuss in a circle. And good. So now, presenting to groups. Well, um, we have to we present quite a variety of things, of resources in one of these books for a group. They are intended as music discussion clubs, and we have activities of different complexity because it depends on what they're able to do. Some we do supply dementia friendly activities related to the music, and some of the people trying it have said, oh no, my group can do any of your activities, even the harder ones, because people in my group are, intelligent to this extent, and they don't want to just have simple activities. It's just short-term memory they're lacking, but they can do this, they can do that. So we present quite a range of activities in any one subject. A book goes by an artist or subject. So there's a Beatles book, there's an ABBA book, and so on.
And
Okay, next slide.
what we've
Go ahead.
explained in the music discussion club is when you read our book, essentially what we mean by groups is any dementia doula, any recreation professional, essentially all these people are short on time. And when they're short on time, they don't have the time to download playlists, make a playlist, and make questions. So by curating things and creating music discussion club guides, we can really help facilitate engagement in seniors,
It's
whether
all
they
it's all ready to use. It's all they have to do is open it up and plug in their computer or whatever they connect with.
right. And in chapter 7, like, so this whole book, like, for those who've come in late, we're explaining the highlights of the chapters in the book, and essentially starting from the history of the music itself to our personal histories, to our philosophy of connected autonomy, to our understanding of how aging should be a cultural product. And then, like Paul mentioned, how did we go about creating a product called Music Discussion Club? I think now chapter 7 personally for me was, I think when you talk about music for the elderly or seniors, there are two kinds of schools of thoughts which are very mainstream in North America and the Western world, which is let's make a personalized playlist or let's get a music therapist. And both of them have value. A personalized playlist is very good for stimulation. It's good to play when you want. It can also help relaxation. And the same thing with clinical therapy. The only thing is the number of people who are trained are very small, and the number of people who can receive that service is again small. And so both have their place in the world of the elderly. But if you imagine from just passively listening to being actively engaged when you have a sickness, there's a big gap. What about people who are not needing therapy but they need some kind of an engagement? And I think that's kind of the gap we want to fill. So, like what Paul talked about, listen, reflect, discuss. Now, listening, like I said, it could be a lecture, it could be us giving you a lecture, or a recreation professional using our guides, giving you a talk, or discussing questions. The playlist is curated for you, and then you have questions to reflect, whether they are through icebreakers or through activities. And there's a lot of discussion we promote because we really want to double down on nostalgia. From what we understand is nostalgia is not something cute and sweet on the side, it's really therapeutic for people. And the way music discussion clubs can harness it is through era specific playlists. People can easily bond over Beatles or Sinatra or Rolling Stones or whatever the band of that era is, and we try to make sure that for every decade there is things available because there's all kinds of people who live together in the world, in a senior living or an aging in place. So second is multisensory storytelling, which means having something visual, for example an art picture which goes with the music, or let's say if the song is New York New York by Sinatra, having landmarks of New York, letting seniors guess those things. Or if there's a song like Fly Me to the Moon, creating objects in the space, letting them spell those things, write those spellings down. So, those kind of things. So, we try to involve all your five senses. Then there's emotional anchors. There's lots of questions you're asked. There's lots of songs. We try to play the most popular songs because we want to hit resonance high. And there's a lot of for community conversation. And the last is gentle recall. Even with advanced dementia, you can typically see a reaction to music, like there's some sort of face lights up or some kind of a thing, or head nodding, or they might just sing the whole song. um, so even for those with dementia, like I mentioned, nostalgia opens a long-term memory, And music is often the last thread to remain intact when other forms of recall fade. So, our tip to maximize this is to include visual materials to support listening, because we want different sensory inputs, and also we want to reinforce listening experience, and we want to stimulate both heart and mind, because when you're looking at elder care, a lot of it is all about like the feelings and not just the thinking. So I think music is a very good balance between the two. And then chapter 8 we talk about, well, a lot of 5 years of suffering versus, like, we know like Beethoven, Mozart, these are the best choices, but commercially it's not, except maybe a few people who are really cultured, it's not very popular. So you have to resort to Frank Sinatra, others who are also, I mean, the good, it's good music, it's still incredibly popular, but that's one of the things we have to focus and balance between commerce and science. um, because essentially with Mozart, we want to, or things like Mozart, we want things which are structured, evidence based, and safe. And now new research says that even familiar songs can do that. But with Sinatra, more than the science behind it, is the commerce is easy for us. It's familiar, it's joyful, it's marketable, and together we have this thing, this sweet spot, which makes it effective and desirable. And so essentially, we believe that music discussion clubs embody the synthesis between commerce and science, and it blends nostalgia with novelty, research with resonance. And you can always combine artists, like you can have a single session which has Mozart to calm and focus and then flow into Sinatra, or you could do an artist at a time. It's really flexible. So, chapter 9, Paul.
All right, so the advantages. Well, you don't need specialized staff. You don't need intensive training. So the cost is not great. Again, it's ready to go out of the box. The recreational professional can just use it. It's more than a playlist. It's structured engagement. And we have it dual framed. So there are dementia friendly programs for people in residences. There's the possibility of cultural exploration and connection by seniors themselves. Next slide. All right, the three pillars of the model. Nostalgia, again, to get the resonance, anchoring the memory. Novelty, to stimulate the curiosity with new stories and genres, and community. So nostalgia, novelty, community. And so, just to summarize, the battle of aging engagement cannot be won by clinical care alone. We need traditions, communities where people feel they belong, and music as a participatory practice provides that. So this is our aim at Seniors Junction. Older adults want meaning, not just entertainment. They want to connect, not be managed. They want to keep growing. Um, Not just, as one person in Western Canada said, this place is like heaven's waiting room. What a sad commentary. So this is what we mean by connected autonomy. They value their autonomy, their independence, but they need the connection of community, and that is what we strive to provide. Go ahead, Namrata.
And so the book's available on Amazon Kindle. If you can scan this, or I'll share the link separately, and it'll be delivered to you tomorrow. This is like a pre-launch, so I'm going to stop share. We can take questions if people are still on the call. And thank you for being there, because we
Yes,
have.
thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Richard. Hi. Okay, I'm going to stop recording this.